Maisie, a little princess with eyes full of innocent hope, settled on the very edge of the sofa. Her legs swung carefree in the air as her cousins whirled around her. They eagerly tore at the wrapping paper, their joyous shouts and ringing laughter filling the room. One proudly displayed a brand new pink tablet, while another jumped for joy, tightly clutching a drone remote control. In this festive chaos, Maisie remained a quiet observer, patiently awaiting her turn. A bright smile played on her face, the smile of a child who believes in miracles, that grandmothers love their grandchildren, and that gifts always come tied with beautiful ribbons bearing your name. I frantically rummaged through the pile of packages under the tree, desperately searching for her name on the coveted tag. It simply had to be there. But the last gift was handed out, and Maisie still sat there, empty-handed. She raised her huge, bewildered eyes to me and whispered so softly that it seemed like the flutter of butterfly wings. "Did Grandma forget me?" I turned sharply to Evelyn and, trying to keep my voice calm, quietly asked, "Maybe another one just got lost somewhere?" Evelyn didn't even blink. "She's not real family," she snapped, as if stating a well-known fact. Not a trace of regret, not a drop of shame in her tone. Her voice was cold and clear, like a weather forecast. "She's adopted. Not like us." Maisie heard every word, every cruel word. She didn't cry, not immediately. She just nodded slowly, as if that explained everything, all her doubts and hopes. Then she looked down at her palms and folded them in her lap, as if trying to become smaller, less noticeable. I felt as if I had been stunned, as if someone had ripped the very life out of me. My mouth opened helplessly, but no sound came out. I wanted to protect her, to say something, anything, just to drown out the pain. But I froze, paralyzed by horror. And the worst thing was, no one, absolutely no one, tried to correct the situation, didn't say a word in defense of this little girl. The cousins exchanged nervous glances. My mother-in-law demonstratively turned away. Jacob, as if petrified, sat next to me. His jaws were twitching, and his gaze was fixed on his mother. But even he didn't say a word. We stayed for that cursed dinner, pretending nothing had happened. Maisie never brought it up again. Late that night, when we returned to the guest room, Jacob opened his suitcase and took out a thick craft paper folder. He looked at me with weight in his eyes and said, "I brought it with me just in case. Hoped it wouldn't be needed." With these words, just after midnight, he left the house, clutching the folder in his hand. I didn't ask what was inside. I understood anyway. Whatever he said to her, whatever she read in that envelope, the next morning, her arrogant smirk was gone. And she never, not once, dared to say that Maisie was not part of the family. This happened last Christmas. It was supposed to be one of those perfect family gatherings, like something out of a magazine cover. A fireplace, with logs crackling cozily, everyone in matching pajamas, fragrant cider warming on the stove, children turning the house into a playground. Evelyn, my mother-in-law, was bending over backward to make everything perfect. Her Pinterest was like a Christmas card come to life. She's one of those who turns table setting into an art. Napkins folded into Christmas trees, each type of cheese on a platter with a personal label. She firmly believes in the immutability of rules, in how things should be. I've been married to her son, Jacob, for 10 years. We met in college, and he immediately struck me with his depth. Calm, thoughtful, quiet, but what an ocean inside. He never rushed into the spotlight, but he listened like no one else. He feels your needs before you. even realize them. Falling in love with him, I fell in love with the dream of a family built on true, deep love. Our path was not strewn with roses. Years of struggling for a child, 4 miscarriages, 2 unsuccessful IVF attempts, endless nights when we just held each other in the dark, without words, because words were powerless. In the end, we came to adoption. It wasn't a backup plan. It became our most faithful decision. Maisie came into our lives through a local agency. She was 5 years old when we met. I will never forget the moment when her little hand first slipped into mine. Not a word, just tiny fingers, trustingly intertwined with mine as we walked through the park. And then I realized, here it is, my happiness. Maisie is a ray of sunshine, illuminating every corner of our lives. She loves to draw, especially animals. She gave every squirrel in our yard a name. Her laughter is contagious, even if no one but her understands the joke. There is so much tenderness, kindness, and deep thoughtfulness in her that it sometimes hurts for her. From the very day she crossed the threshold of our house, Jacob became her dad. Not a stepmother, not a foster parent, but simply Dad. "Mom," she blurted out one evening as I was brushing her hair. I didn't correct her. Tears just welled up in my eyes. We never made any distinction between her and us. But, unfortunately, not everyone shared our approach. Evelyn was polite when we introduced Maisie. Cold, but polite. At first, she didn't say anything offensive. But she never really saw her. Didn't remember her favorite colors. Didn't ask questions. Didn't put in a fraction of the effort she spent on our nieces and nephews. I desperately tried to convince myself that she would change. I believed she just needed time to open up. Jacob, more insightful, had no illusions. He knew his mother too well and didn't expect a miracle. But for Maisie's sake, he was willing to give her a chance. So, when Evelyn invited us all to her home in North Carolina for Christmas, we agreed. We packed the car to the brim with gifts and treats and set off on the 6-hour journey. Maisie was ecstatic. She made cards for each of her cousins and eagerly anticipated seeing the huge tree Evelyn always put up in the hall. She even brought her favorite dress, dreaming of looking grown up. I remember watching her in the back seat. She cheerfully sang along to Christmas tunes, clutching her teddy bear tightly. And then I thought, this year will be different. This year she will feel it. She will feel that she is part of this home. When we arrived, the house was buzzing with voices and warmth. Siblings, cousins, pets, all mingled in joyful chaos. Maisie immediately threw herself into this whirlwind as if she had come home. I saw her hug Evelyn and noticed her pat her head slightly, like a stranger's child. Not maliciously, but with a certain detachment. And yet I smiled, clinging to fading hope. Maybe it's just awkwardness, I whispered to myself. Perhaps love doesn't blossom in every heart on its own, but that doesn't mean it will never look there. I bustled in the kitchen, preparing dinner. Jacob, surrounded by children's laughter, was enthusiastically playing with them. Maisie, beaming, handed out reindeer-shaped cookies. The picture was almost perfect, the atmosphere almost serene. But this idyll collapsed the next morning, at the hour when the gifts were to shine. My girl, as if lost, sat down in a circle of rejoicing children, watching with bated breath as they tore open the wrapping paper, releasing a fountain of joy. And her own hands remained empty. And all my hopes, fragile as glass, shattered right before my eyes. After breakfast, filled with anticipation, the children rushed into Evelyn's house. Gift time had arrived. It wasn't just entertainment. It was the culmination of the holiday. Underneath the 12-foot tree, awash in a sea of colorful wrapping paper, lay treasures. The children, forming a circle, took turns handing each other gifts, watching the reaction with delight. Maisie was practically jumping with anticipation, her gaze darting from the tree to me, and she whispered, "I think mine has a purple snowman on it." I smiled and nodded, trying not to betray my anxiety, although I didn't see her name on any of the gifts. A heaviness grew in my chest, but I pushed away the bad thoughts. Maybe her gift is hidden behind the tree? Or still languishing in the guest room closet? Maybe Evelyn saved it for last, as the most precious surprise? Gifts were unwrapped one after another, as if by magic. Squeals of delight, ringing laughter. Each child clutched a new toy, a trendy gadget, or a shiny jacket. Maisie sincerely rejoiced for each cousin, giving them applause as if they had a personal holiday. But the mountain of gifts under the tree was melting before our eyes. 5 children, 10 gifts, then 3 children, 2 gifts, and now there was only one left. Not one with Maisie's name on it. And she noticed it. She turned to me, and in her voice there was a quiet hope. "Did Grandma forget about mine?" I glanced around the space, pretending to look. "Maybe it's just lost," I said. At that moment, I got up and, unable to stand it, addressed Evelyn directly. "Hey, isn't there another gift lying around for Maisie by any chance?" Evelyn didn't show a hint of surprise. On the contrary, her face showed irritation, as if I was putting on a show, breaking some unwritten rules with my question. She looked directly into Maisie's eyes and said in an icy tone, "She's not family." I was stunned. It seemed completely unacceptable to me. Silence fell. Not the shocked silence that follows a scandal, but the silence of indifference. One of the cousins began to concentrate on fiddling with the ribbon on his gift. My mother-in-law cleared her throat and began to diligently fuss with a trash bag for wrapping paper. No one looked at me. No one looked at Maisie. I peered into my daughter's face, waiting to see some kind of reaction, but her face remained expressionless. Not a hint of paleness, not a single tear. Only a slow blinking, as if she was struggling to understand where she had gone wrong. And then, oh my God, that nod. Quiet, almost imperceptible, as if she had grasped something she shouldn't have known. My heart clenched with pain. I knelt before her, feeling my hands tremble. Gathering all my willpower, I whispered in an even voice, "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetie." She nodded again, and a weak, strained smile appeared on her lips. "It's okay, Mommy. Maybe I'll have better luck next time." I don't know how I didn't break down then, flashed through my mind. Jacob sat like a stone, his jaws clenched in pain, his gaze fixed on one spot. It seemed like any movement would trigger an explosion. I waited. I waited for someone, anyone, to say, "Evelyn, this is inhumane." Or, "Maisie is part of our family." Or at least simply, "This is wrong." But the silence pressed down like lead. And anger, rage, churned within me, directed not only at Evelyn, but at every adult in that room who had chosen comfort and silence over courage and justice. I wanted to scream, to lose my voice. I wanted to scoop Maisie up in my arms and run away from here without looking back. But I didn't. I remained seated, as if paralyzed, trying to simultaneously contain the rising storm and maintain the remnants of dignity. What would happen to Maisie if she saw my rage? How would it affect Jacob if I confronted his mother in front of the whole family? I was silent, but with every moment of silence, I felt like I was betraying my own daughter. When the room filled with life again, The children scattered back to their activities, and the adults, returning to coffee and phones, immersed themselves in their usual routines. I noticed Maisie, like a shadow, slip into a corner. She curled up there, clutching her stuffed bear, her shoulders tense, her gaze fixed on the floor. Not a sound came from her for the rest of the morning. Not a single request for a gift. Not a why. Only that fake, strained smile remained frozen on her face. And every time someone glanced at her, she tried to look like nothing was wrong. But I saw it. That moment seared itself into my soul like a brand. A cold, burning rage from which there was no escape. Then I didn't know that Jacob had already made a decision. He had seen enough. And he wasn't going to let this silence last another day. That night, an eerie silence reigned in the house. Too quiet. The last dish washed, the wine drunk, polite good nights said, awkward hugs given. We returned to the guest room and closed the door tightly behind us. Maisie had already changed into her pajamas and curled up in bed, clutching her stuffed fox, her faithful companion. The silence in the room pressed down like a thick fog. No requests for a story, no call to Santa, only a motionless gaze fixed on the ceiling. I sat down beside her, gently stroking her back until her breathing became more even. "Mom," she whispered, as if afraid to break the silence. "Yes, sweetie? Do you think maybe she didn't know I was coming?" A lump rose in my throat, making it hard to breathe. "No, honey. She knew." "Oh." A pause filled with childish sadness. "Maybe she just doesn't know me yet." I clenched my teeth so hard that I tasted the salty tang of blood on my lips. "Maybe so," I forced out. "But you're not to blame, you hear? Not at all." She only nodded, burying her face in the pillow, as if trying to hide from the pain. When I stood up, Jacob was standing in the doorway. He was holding some kind of folder. Silently, he looked at our daughter, then at me, and finally lowered his gaze to the envelope. "I'm done," he said quietly, and there was steel in his voice. "I've let my mother say a lot of things. I've let her get away with it because it was easier. But this, I won't allow it. Not with Maisie." I froze, stunned. I had never seen him like this before. No shouting, no trembling, only unwavering firmness. Determination forged in fire. "What is it?" I asked, unable to tear my gaze away from him. He handed me the craft paper folder. Inside were documents, a notarized will, updated, the appointment of a trustee, and an official record of Maisie's adoption. "She's not just the daughter of our hearts, you understand," he said, and his voice was like steel. "She's my daughter by all the damn laws. I've put her everywhere. In the house, in the savings, in the insurances, in all the insurances, in the family trust, in everything. She is my daughter in every sense that this world recognizes." I stared at him, overwhelmed. You did all this?" "I started drawing up the papers months ago. I wanted everything to be official, so there would be no loopholes. I just didn't tell anyone. I knew that if my mother crossed the line, I would have something to protect Maisie with." My legs buckled. "And what are you going to do?" He glanced at his watch. "Midnight." Grabbed his coat. "I'm going to show her who Maisie is." I didn't try to stop him. Didn't ask him to calm down. I just nodded, feeling everything inside tighten into a knot, and sat on the bed, listening to the soft creak of the front door opening and closing behind him. I don't know what was going through his mother's head when he showed up unannounced. I don't know if she was expecting shouting, accusations, pleas for forgiveness, but I'm sure she wasn't expecting to see him with a folder in his hands. He entered the house where he spent his childhood and sat at the kitchen table across from his mother. "I didn't come here to yell," he said, without a trace of anger in his voice, only ice. "And I didn't come to ask for forgiveness either. I'm here to give you a choice." He pushed the folder across the table. She opened it, and he kept his eyes fixed on her face, watching every change in expression as she read. He unleashed his anger on her. Maisie is her name on every legal document that matters. If you want to continue this charade, pretending she's not part of our family, that's your choice. But know this, Mom. If that's your choice, then I'm no longer your son. I won't let my daughter grow up in a family where she's treated like an outsider. She tried to get a word in, but he didn't give her a chance. His voice trembled with pain and anger as he recounted. "Did you see Maisie clapping, happy for her cousins? Did you feel her hug you, calling you Grandma, with such love and hope? Can you imagine her falling asleep, wondering what she did wrong?" He took a deep breath, trying to steady the tremor in his voice. "You have one last chance to fix things, Mom. Because next Christmas, we'll be somewhere else. Far from here." With those words, he stood abruptly and left the room, leaving her stunned. Back in our room, he silently lay down next to me, holding my hand tightly. I couldn't sleep. My gaze was fixed on the ceiling, and I felt just like Maisie, lost and alone. I thought about how many times I had sacrificed my child's happiness to keep the peace in this family. But that night, something broke. Something changed in both of us. We were no longer going to hide behind silence, protecting someone else's cruelty. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like we were united. Not just as husband and wife, but as parents. The ones who will always be there when it really matters. The next morning, there was a strange atmosphere in the house. The silence was oppressive, not the peaceful silence of Christmas morning. It was filled with tension and restraint. Everyone was tiptoeing around, pretending nothing had happened, but everyone knew that something had changed forever. Maisie, settled at the kitchen table, was slowly stirring the hot chocolate Jacob had made, quietly humming to herself. In her eyes, though tired, there was a spark that hadn't been there the night before. I was about to suggest a walk when there was a knock on the guest room door. It was Evelyn, but not the Evelyn we were used to seeing. Where had her usual composure, polished smile, and impeccable perfection gone? She seemed smaller, quieter. "May I come in?" she asked timidly. Jacob was silent. I just nodded in agreement. Evelyn entered, holding a medium-sized box wrapped in silver paper. No ribbon. Approaching Maisie, she leaned down and placed the box in front of her. "I forgot this yesterday," she said. Maisie looked at her with confusion, then at the box. Her hands didn't reach for the gift. Evelyn cleared her throat. "I made a mistake." Her voice sounded quiet and tired. "And I'm sorry." She wasn't talking to me or Jacob. She was talking to Maisie. I let a foolish thought take over, deciding that family is only blood. But I forgot that family is love. And you've loved me from the start more than I deserve. Maisie, seeking support, looked at me uncertainly. I nodded almost imperceptibly, encouraging her. She carefully unwrapped the gift, as if touching something sacred. Inside, like a treasure, lay a set of watercolor paints. Not a cheap imitation, but a professional artist's tool. Next to it was a brand new sketchbook, smelling of fresh paper, and on top of that, a card. Maisie carefully opened it and silently read it, her lips barely moving, saying words inaudible to me. Then she looked up at Evelyn. In her eyes, there was a silent question. Hope. "Do you want me to paint something for you?" she asked quietly. Tears welled up in Evelyn's eyes. "I would love that very much," she whispered. Maisie nodded, simply and restrainedly. "Okay." No broad smile, no enthusiastic hugs, no theatrical reunion. Just this simple but significant, okay. It spoke volumes of hope, of the beginning of a journey toward healing. When Evelyn left the room, I turned to Jacob. There was no trace of smugness or a victor's triumph on his face. He didn't say, "I told you so." He just sighed wearily and sat down next to me on the sofa. "How long do you think it will last?" I asked, not taking my eyes off his face. He shrugged, a gesture laced with uncertainty. "I don't know, but it's a beginning," he replied, a touch of tentative hope in his voice. That night, before bed, Mia was absorbed in drawing something in her new sketchbook. The next morning, she showed us her drawing. A little girl holding hands tightly with two tall people, a man and a woman. Behind them was a cozy house with a sprawling tree. And in the sky, a smiling sun shone brightly. She named her drawing simply and touchingly, Home. She handed the drawing to Jacob, and he, after gently kissing her forehead, whispered, "That's exactly what we are." His voice was filled with love and hope for a happy future. A few days later, after the suitcases were unpacked, a plain envelope appeared in the mailbox. No return address, only Evelyn's familiar, calligraphically precise handwriting. Inside was a yellowed photograph, a 5-year-old Jacob holding his mother's hand tightly. On the back, words seemingly carved in stone. Family. Are those you fight for? Now I see that. Thank you for fighting for her. I wasn't expecting a miracle, and I still don't. Evelyn remained true to herself, proud, unyielding, with a deeply ingrained concept of family that left no room for maneuver. But she ran into a line that she couldn't cross without dire consequences. And Jacob, my reserved, wise husband, drew that line with crystal clarity. No shouting, no threats, no reproaches. Just naked truth, presented to her as a choice. Who did she want to be? She chose Maisie, and that choice changed everything. Because when someone finally sees your child for who they are, not as a burden to be endured, but as a treasure to be cherished, a weight you didn't even know you were carrying suddenly lifts from your shoulders. That Christmas didn't explode with fireworks, didn't resonate with orchestral music, didn't turn into a tearjerker scene from a movie. It ended with a paintbrush in my daughter's little hand, and her grandmother leaning over her, patiently teaching the basics of the craft. And that was more than enough. In Evelyn's eyes, usually cold and distant, something warm, almost tender, flickered. She smiled slightly at Maisie, and in that fleeting gesture, I saw hope for a future where my daughter would be surrounded by the love and understanding she deserved. The drive home was silent, but it wasn't the oppressive silence of tension, but the soothing silence of peace. The kind that comes after a storm when the hurricane has passed, leaving you standing, renewed and strengthened. Maisie, curled up in the back seat, fell asleep, clutching her sketchbook. Glancing back, I noticed a familiar drawing, our family holding hands, and something new, a tiny figure nestled beside them, a woman with silver hair. She stood close enough to be part of the family, but as if hesitant to take center stage. I didn't ask Maisie who it was. I already knew the answer. At home, life gradually returned to normal. School beckoned Maisie back to her desk. Jacob plunged back into work. and Maisie. Maisie disappeared behind the kitchen table every afternoon, absorbed in coloring page after page with fantastical creatures, fairy tale trees, and little girls remarkably like herself. One day, she drew a fox, comfortably settled at the kitchen table with a cup of tea in its paws. "That's Grandma," she smiled in response to my questioning look. "She's learning." It was this moment that pierced me the most. Not Evelyn's sudden transformation, not the miraculous transformation of our life into an idol, but the fact that Maisie had given her a chance. Even after experiencing rejection, after feeling invisible, she reopened the door, allowing love to make another attempt. In this small gesture lay hope, forgiveness, and boundless childlike faith in the best. The childlike ability to forgive is a gift unavailable to many adults. I still vividly remember that episode in Evelyn's living room. The sharp tone of her voice echoes in my memory. The lingering silence weighs on my shoulders, and the realization of my own weakness when I didn't stand up for her burns inside. How many times had I told myself that peace in the family was more important than confronting pain? But that day turned my perception of the world upside down. A world built on lies is a fiction, a false backdrop. And that falsehood cost my daughter dearly. She lost something priceless, albeit for a short time. A sense of belonging, a belief that she was dear to the people she considered family. It's a risk I'll never take again. Since then, much has changed, gradually, not always smoothly. Evelyn started calling more often. She asks about Maisie's artwork, sends touching handwritten cards, sometimes clumsy, but always sincere. The last one read, "I am proud of your view of the world. You have made my world wider, and for now, that is enough. Not because we have forgotten the past, but because we are finally honest with each other." Now, when Evelyn visits, she brings not just gifts, but genuine effort. And that means so much more than any shiny wrapping. I used to think family was those who raised you, blood relatives or spouses. But now I see it differently. Family isn't just blood ties. It's those who reach out in difficult times. Those who see right through you and declare, "You're my person." No ifs, ands, or buts. And sometimes a quiet but clear boundary is needed for people to finally see the truth that's right in front of them. My husband didn't make a scene. He simply took his daughter under his wing. He showed me that love is action, and silence can be louder than any cruelty. And to get your point across, you don't have to scream your lungs out. It's enough to stand your ground and hold on to the truth, not allowing yourself to waver. And Maisie, she taught me that even after betrayal, you can choose the path of forgiveness, not for the offender, but for yourself. Because belonging isn't something you have to earn. It's something you just need to feel. And now Maisie feels that not only from us, but also, finally, from her grandmother. And when I'm asked what our Christmas was like that year, I say, it was the year the old crumbled and something beautiful began. That year was a turning point for my daughter. She realized that love isn't a one-time choice, but a daily affirmation, especially when it's needed most. Thank you for allowing me to share our story. If it touched your memories or wounds that still ache, remember, you're not alone. Families can be complicated, but your worth is undeniable. You don't have to earn your place in life. And if you're raising a child, whether biological, adopted, or any other, don't let anyone instill in them a sense of rejection. Protect them. Defend their right to love. Love them louder. If this story resonated with you, please take a second to like it. This will help others find it. Your thoughts and personal stories that you're willing to share in the comments mean a lot to me. I read every message. If you're new to my channel and want more sincere and honest stories, subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss new videos. Thank you for being with me. Thank you for seeing Macy. Thank you for choosing kindness and compassion. Until next time, take care of yourselves and those you call family.